knock on the Saints' door. Quarterback sneak by Tom Brady to the 43-year-old score. He did. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Now, spike that ball, Tom Brady. Who says I'm 43? He runs right up the gut and scores 6. 7. Handoff, run the ball. Fournette slashes away to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 30, 25, to the 20. Fournette to the 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Run the ball, Leonard Fournette. Wow, what a blast. Up the gut, found daylight, and outran everybody. Fire the cannons, get them going. Bucs win. Bucs win, Bucs win. Fire them cannons.
First snap in Vikings territory for Tampa Bay. Brady all day. Downfield. Touchdown. Scott Miller. Four-man rush. Brady airing it out. Going deep. He's got it to Antonio Brown. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones will get it. Big hole. Jones gets by. Ronald Jones may go all the way. Being chased from behind. Does Jones have enough? Still on his feet. Ronald Jones, 98-yard touchdown.
Merry Christmas and welcome to another episode of the Swords Up podcast. Today we're going to be talking about our Week 16 matchup, a Saturday nationally televised game, 1 o'clock Eastern on NFL Network, away against the Detroit Lions. An important game for us in this one as we officially clinch a playoff spot with a win in this game. So today we're going to be talking about the keys to this game and giving a prediction at the end of it for this very important game for the Bucs as they head towards a playoff push. But I do want to start out with the Pro Bowl rosters that were revealed earlier this week. And the only Buccaneers player that was selected for this year's Pro Bowl was Jason Pierre-Paul. This is his third Pro Bowl in his career that he has made. Obviously, the first two were when he was on the Giants. So congrats to JPP for that. And I do want to go over his season so far. But I also want to take a look at some Buccaneers that definitely deserve to make it that I'm surprised didn't make it onto the Pro Bowl roster. But let's look at Jason Pierre-Paul's 2020 season so far. And he has had a pretty impressive year. I did mention a couple times how I thought he was going to make the Pro Bowl. But honestly, I don't think he's been our most Pro Bowl worthy player. But it is good for him that he was able to end up on the roster. And so far in 2020, he's had 50 total tackles, 6 for a loss, and 9.5 sacks, which is tied for 7th most in the NFL, 12 QB hits, 4 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. I'd say he's been a pretty good force off of the edge. Obviously, he's been selected to the Pro Bowl for what he's done as a pass rusher this year, but I'd say he's formed a pretty formidable duo with Shaq Barrett this year. And if you look at more of the other stats like total pressures and pressure rate, like those advanced really like next gen stats, Shaq Barrett has actually been the more dominant pass rusher compared to Jason Pierre-Paul over the season. And while Shaq Barrett doesn't have as many sacks as JPP does and the production that JPP has that landed him on the Pro Bowl this year, and obviously Shaq Barrett isn't on pace for the franchise record amount of sacks that he had last year with 19.5, but Shaq Barrett still had a heck of a year, and Jason Pierre-Paul has as well. It's just that Shaq Barrett's been more doing the dirty work, and Jason Pierre-Paul has sometimes cleaned up those plays, but I'm not going to take much away considering that JPP did make the roster, and it's more of a numbers game, honestly, for the Pro Bowl and popularity-wise. And that leads me into 3 Buccaneers that definitely deserve to make the Pro Bowl for me that didn't make it. And that was Devin White, Levante David, and Ronald Jones. I'm not going to get too much into the Pro Bowl because obviously it's mostly become a popularity contest, and also it's not just with the Buccaneers where a lot of people feel like mistakes were made in the selections. But I'm feeling pretty confident that those 3 will get the recognition they deserve for their great seasons this year. And I'm sure that either Devin White or Levante David will end up on one of the All-Pro teams. I wouldn't take too much away from the Pro Bowl rosters, but I'll be shocked if one of Devin White or Levante David does not end up on one of the All-Pro rosters. So we'll see what happens when the All-Pro selections come around. As honestly, I think that's more of the better bar to set in terms of individual accomplishment throughout a season. All right, so now getting into the injury report, let's start out on the Buccaneers side of things. And I mentioned how I was a bit concerned with Carlton Davis' status coming into this week after he left in the middle of last week's game with the groin injury, and he's going to be coming into this game as doubtful with that injury that he dealt with against the Falcons. And Bruce Arians actually said earlier this week that Carlton Davis might have been good to go if he were playing on a Sunday this week, so that extra day has likely cost Carlton Davis this week. So we'll see if Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting can step up this week. I know Sean Murphy-Bunting's been struggling lately in my opinion, but he really did have his breakout game last season in Week 15 against the Lions. So we'll see what he can do along with Jamel Dean and Ross Cockrell in this one. And also Ronald Jones hasn't been activated yet off the COVID list. So likely it'll be Leonard Fournette starting again at running back. And we were able to see what he could do with his opportunity last week, so I'm not too particularly concerned, as I think Fournette will do a decent job once again. Now moving on to the Lions side of things, they have a lot of players dealing with injuries. I'll start with the two players that are already confirmed to be out for this one, and that's going to be backup offensive lineman Tyrell Crosby, dealing with an ankle injury, and then their star wide receiver Kenny Golladay, out with a hip injury, going to be missing his 8th straight game of the season, and he's been dealing with injuries throughout the season. He's only been able to play 4 games this year, and it's just really unfortunate if you're a Lions fan to see that, as he is really one of the most underrated receivers in the league, and definitely the top weapon on this offense. And I don't really see him playing at all anymore this year, so hopefully he can be back and healthy for next season. Now getting into all the players that are listed as questionable, starting out with their leading tackler, linebacker Jamie Collins dealing with a neck injury, tackle Taylor Decker dealing with the groin injury, safety Jaron Kearse also questionable, with their kicker Matt Prater dealing with the back injury, center Frank Ragnow dealing with a very interesting injury, a fractured throat, in which he was unable to talk at all last week during practice. So that's going to be a big miss if they're without him, as obviously the center is the main point of communication along the offensive line. Not only that, he was also selected to the Pro Bowl this year, so obviously a very important piece for them. And then also listed as questionable, corner Dale Roberts dealing with a hip injury, Matthew Stafford, who has been dealing with injuries all season long. I'm surprised that he's going to be able to go in this one, but he's been dealing with an injury to his right thumb and also to his ribs. Really just shows you the toughness that he has. And also their swing tackle Halapoulivaati Vaitai still in the concussion protocol, questionable coming into this one. All right, so now getting into the key players for the Lions, and I'm going to be highlighting TJ Hawkinson in this one for them. And really in the NFC this year, it's been kind of a weak class of tight ends this year, especially with George Kittle being out for most of the season. But TJ Hawkinson's really come on strong and been one of the breakout players on this team. And he was also selected to his first Pro Bowl this year, so that's good for him. And so far in 2020, he has 60 catches for 675 yards, 6 touchdowns, and averaging 11.3 yards per catch. Has really emerged as the top weapon in the passing game on this Lions offense, with Kenny Golladay being out for most of the year. I'd really keep an eye on TJ Hawkinson, as he's probably going to be the focal point of the Lions offense coming into this game. And with that being said, let's get into Matt Stafford, as like I mentioned, I've really been impressed to see his toughness this year. I mean, he's been dealing with injuries all year, and somehow he's still been able to play all 14 games. Not only that, I just think he's a really underrated quarterback in general. I know I rated him in my top 10 quarterbacks at the beginning of the season, and I don't know how many people would rate him as a top 10 quarterback, but nonetheless, with the injuries he's dealt with throughout the year, he's still had a pretty solid season statistically, and you got to appreciate what he has done with this Lions franchise. And so far in 2020, he has 314 completions on 494 attempts, giving him a 64.2% completion percentage for 3,774 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a respectable quarterback rating of 95.3. Honestly, if Matt Stafford and this Lions offense can get going in this one, they have the firepower to really stay close in this one. I know they got blown out by the Titans last week, but with this dangerous offense they really have the ability to play any team close, and so that is something to keep an eye out for. All right, so now getting into the Buccaneers side of things, and I'm going to be highlighting Mike Evans for us in this one. I think he's going to be a really key contributor in this one, as the Lions defense is ranked one of the worst in terms of pass defense. They're just one of the worst defenses statistically overall this year. And so look for Mike Evans to really take advantage of the matchup this week. And also because with these last 2 games of the season, he has the chance to make a little bit of history and break some records. In the final 2 games of the season, he needs 221 yards to break his tie of the most 1,000-yard receiving seasons to start a career, which is currently set at 6 seasons, as he is tied with the great Randy Moss. And so hopefully he can get those 221 yards in these final 2 games to set that record. And so far in 2020, he has 57 catches for 779 yards, 11 touchdowns, and averaging 13.7 yards per catch. He hasn't been as productive this season as in seasons past. Obviously, you can attribute that to the weapons that we have on offense now, just a more all-around talent, and the way we've been spreading the ball around all year. But also he was really dealing with injuries kind of in the middle and early part of the season. Even though he didn't miss any games with these injuries, he was dealing with them. Like, for example, in the first game of the season against the Saints, he had a touchdown catch in that game, but that was pretty much his only action because he was coming into that one with a hamstring injury that he aggravated during practice the week before. But now that Mike Evans looks to be healthy coming into this part of the season, look for him to hopefully have a big day and set that record that I did mention earlier. All right, so now getting into the prediction part of the video, and I see the Buccaneers offense once again having a dominant day like they did in the second half against the Falcons. I'm just hoping that we can do that for the whole game. I know the inconsistency may show up again in this one, but I just have the faith that against a porous defense that Tom Brady and the offense will be able to shred them apart. I mean, Tom Brady this year has been fantastic against some pretty terrible defenses, but when he has come up against defenses with good pass rushes, which the Lions really don't have as a unit, then that's when Tom Brady has struggled and our offense has had some pretty bad games. And I just don't see that happening in this one. And also with the matchups of our receivers against the Lions defense, I think it's just the overwhelming of star power on that side of the ball. I'm hoping that the defense can do what they did last week. They got off to a rough start. The Falcons offense got hot. Matt Ryan got hot, but they tightened it up in the second half, and I can kind of see that happening in this one with us again. We'll just see what happens for that. And lately, I was predicting high-scoring games before, and then our games ended up being a little lower scoring than I predicted. And then I did the opposite last week. I predicted more of a lower scoring game than I normally had done, and then it ended up being a higher scoring game. And so I guess I'll go somewhere in the middle with these two offenses facing off, and I'll predict the Buccaneers win once again in this one, and I'll say it'll be by a score of 30-21. All right, so that's going to be it for this week's preview video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video when hopefully we have a more clear picture of the playoffs heading into Week 17 with the Week 16 actually being over, and hopefully by the next time another video comes out, the Buccaneers will have officially punched their ticket into the playoffs with a win in this one. But that is it for me. Thank you guys for watching, and go Bucs.